It was a difficult time in London in 1848 for the living, and worse still, for one to be dead. A cholera epidemic had swept the city and killed nearly 15,000 of its residents. And the bodies rolled next to the churches waiting for burial, but there was one problem: there was no place for burial.
Did you know that the holder of the book is more dangerous than the holder of the arms?
The population of London was increasing, and in 1801 AD, the city had a population of less than 1 million people. In the year 1851 AD, this number doubled to nearly 2.5 million individuals, but the 300 acres allocated for burial remained unchanged, which requires the use of ancient tombs, and exhuming the remains regularly to make room for new burial sites. The old corpses were scattered and crushed due to soil contamination with the water supply, which led to the emergence of a new set of epidemics, as cholera, smallpox, measles, and typhoid were widespread in Victorian London in abundance. A number of proposed solutions were presented in 1852, when a new cemetery was opened outside the built-up area in London, but it was only a temporary solution, and Edwin Chadwick planned 2 new large cemeteries outside the boundaries of the metropolitan boundaries. While the promoters of the Necropolis Cemetery planned a large cemetery far enough from the city to not be affected by urban growth, which can be reached by taking the railway, therefore, the bodies were passing on the train to reach the new cemetery, so a train was opened to transport the dead only. The Necropolis Railway did not take off the way the London Necropolis Company had hoped at its peak from 1894 to 1903. The train carried only 2,300 bodies a year. In 1902 AD, daily train service ended due to no passengers, and by the 1930s, it was unusual for trains to run more than twice a week, but on the night of April 16 to 17, 1941, one of the worst air raids took place on London, and a bomb exploded at the railway station, making many of the tracks unusable. After the war, the company decided to reopen the railway station again, but it was not feasible from a financial point of view, and the line was closed. But with time the trains continued to operate for 87 years and continued to transport more than 200,000 bodies. Today there are still a number of reminders about the railway service to transport the dead. The 2 stations were demolished in the 60s of the last century after it caught fire, but the entrance to the station is still intact, and the station was not the only one to transport the dead. In the period from 1867 AD to 1948 AD, another was built in Sydney to transport the dead to Rookwood Cemetery in Melbourne, and in Berlin also. This happened from 1913 to 1952. It was called Friedhofsbahn, or the Cemetery Line, and there was a similar railway in Finland. Enough so, do not forget to subscribe to the channel, and give us admiration. See you soon.